Have your say on Liverpool's win tonight online with Peter Beardsley. Log on to bbc.co.uk/5live from 10:15.
Meet Ronnie. He's an Essex boy and likes to race. Nobody clears quicker than the Rocket. I call John the Ton. He can't leave the table until he sees the 100. Mr. Parrott, you all know, he goes way back, but he stays with the best. And when you talk about the best, there's Stephen. They'll put 147 on his gravestone. Finally, Mark. He's the champ. That's all you need to know. These boys are serious players, but this is a serious business. The World Snooker Championship starts Saturday on Grandstand and continues every day on BBC Two.
Boxing greats on BBC One with the heavyweights at their height and a world gripped by the kings of the ring. Seconds out for the whole story in 35 minutes.
It's a new digital service. It's called BBC Text. You can access the information you want surprisingly easily, while still watching your favourite programme.
I'm going out for a paper.
You can get up-to-minute news from the BBC. Use the shortcuts to get to the latest sports results. Or check the weather before you go out. The best bit is, you can do it all from the comfort of your own armchair. Or someone else's.
Available now on your digital channels. BBC Text.
Go on, improve your text life.
This is BBC One, now the news, with Peter Sissons.
The bungled injection that killed a teenager, 2 doctors accept the blame. Wayne Jowett's family say procedures should change now to prevent further deaths. Fully under control, today's official verdict on the foot and mouth epidemic. South African AIDS campaigners celebrate a landmark retreat by the drug makers. The Manchester United imposter, who made it from the crowd to the first team.
And coming up in UK Today, the Scottish Executive appoints a troubleshooter to help avoid a repeat of last year's exam fiasco. There's a 5-point plan to ensure results are delivered accurately and on time.
Good evening. 2 inexperienced hospital doctors today admitted the mistake that killed an 18-year-old teenager, and they apologised to the family of Wayne Jowett, a cancer patient who died in early January, a month after they'd injected a powerful drug into his spine instead of a vein. The Nottinghamshire coroner, who criticised procedures at the city's Queen's Medical Centre, recorded a verdict of accidental death. He said, "It's not right we can put a man on the moon, but we cannot find a safe method to prevent similar incidents." The family said the lessons that could have prevented Wayne's death should have been learned long ago.
Wayne Jowett's parents arrived for the inquest this morning, calling on the coroner to record a verdict of unlawful killing for their son's death. Instead, he recorded a verdict of accidental death, but made a scathing attack on the people and systems he said had let Wayne Jowett down. Wayne had been making a good recovery, undergoing chemotherapy for leukemia at the Queen's Medical Centre, but 2 junior doctors with little knowledge of his treatment and not fully trained to administer chemotherapy made a fatal mistake. Instead of injecting the anti-cancer drug vincristine into a vein, they injected it into his spine, and Wayne died a slow and painful death.
They'd injected a drug into his spine, which they shouldn't have done. And it was fatal, and they needed to try and get this drug out.
We were angry that it happened, and it's just unbelievable that it can happen.
The government chose today to announce new procedures to be introduced across the NHS to ensure this mistake doesn't happen again. They include national guidelines for all hospitals, which at the moment have different ways of handling the drug. Changes in the way syringes are designed so they can't be injected into the spine, better labelling and colour coding of vincristine, and improved training for medical staff.
The reports have been sent out today to all hospitals with cancer treatment departments, and chief executives of hospitals are being asked to immediately designate those doctors who are allowed to give this form of therapy, so that we can't have a situation, as appears to have happened in Nottingham, where doctors who were inexperienced were giving this treatment.
It was clear that safety procedures here in Nottingham weren't adequate. The hospital admits it was a series of mistakes and poor practice which led to Vin Christine wrongly being injected into Wayne Jowett's spine. Today's national guidelines should go some way to rectify those systems and prevent such high-profile mistakes happening again. The Trust and the doctors today apologised to the Jowett family, but for them the tragedy continues. They have to live with the knowledge that their son's death could have been avoided. Navdeep Dhariwal, BBC News, Nottingham.
And our social affairs editor, Neil Dixon, is at the Department of Health. Neil, there's a general impression, whenever there's a high-profile case like this, that serious medical mistakes are becoming more frequent. Are they?
No, I don't think they are becoming more frequent. I think doctors are probably under more pressure. They have to give more complicated drugs than they used to. We're talking about cocktails of very potent medicines here, and so there may be mistakes surrounding that wouldn't have happened a generation ago because those drugs simply weren't there. But I think it's also that the system is more open. That said, the government admits there are far too many drug errors, and it's clear here you had a catastrophic human failure, but a system that did not prevent that catastrophic human failure from occurring. And it's getting the systems right, because people will always make mistakes. It's getting the systems right that's so important.
Now, do the measures announced today do that? Are they really going to be watertight?
Well, it ought not to happen. There have been 5 deaths like this over the last 10 years in the National Health Service, so it ought to be possible to design systems whereby it can't happen. I mean, the drug, in this case, the 2 drugs that were mixed up had the same colour of writing on them. They shouldn't have had the same colour of writing on them. The doctors should have been able to see more clearly. They were the same colour of liquid. It's things like that you can design in a technological sense so that people can't actually attach a drug that's meant for your vein to your spine, and they ought to be able to do that. But I think there's a wider issue as well. Earlier this week, the government announced a new National Patient Safety Agency, and the idea of that agency will be to collect all the mistakes around the health service, to learn, rather like the airline industry, from near misses, so that the NHS learns when there has been a mistake in one hospital, not for it to be repeated in another.
Neil Dixon, thank you. The government's chief scientific advisor has said for the first time that the foot and mouth epidemic is fully under control. Professor David King said his optimistic assessment was based on a significant drop in the daily number of outbreaks. With farmers' leaders hardening their opposition to a policy of limited vaccination, 12 new cases of foot and mouth were confirmed today, bringing the total across the UK to 1,397.
The images may be as shocking as ever, but today the government issued its most optimistic, most upbeat assessment yet about foot and mouth, daring to hope it is at last conquering the disease.
This is the first point since the epidemic began when I can say that the epidemic is now fully under control. And I'm using that phrase in the scientific sense. It means that we have a decrease in the number of infected premises being reported daily, and that decrease can be expected to continue.
The outbreak began with a steady increase in the number of daily cases, rising to a peak of about 50 at the end of March. Since then, though, the figures have fallen equally steadily, with the number of cases dropping by half every fortnight, according to the government. Significantly, it's a decline that mirrors this country's last major outbreak in 1967. But if the war is being won, there's still a dispute about which weapons to fight it with. Tim Budden is an organic farmer in Devon. Under the policy of preemptive slaughter, his healthy sheep are likely to be killed because there's foot and mouth nearby. But he and many others insist there is an alternative.
Well, I'm gutted, really. We think we now have a neighbouring case, which means that all these healthy animals have got to go, when there really is an option. I mean, vaccination is a possibility. I mean, why isn't it being used now?
And many vets are now campaigning against what they call the needless cull of cattle. At this farm in Dumfriesshire today, healthy livestock are about to be slaughtered. But the local vet says careful monitoring of the animals here makes much more sense than automatic slaughter.
I think the people that are fortunate enough to survive should be given this extra chance. And it's important that we get enough veterinary input into these premises that are remaining, that we can monitor the situation and we can put an assessment on in the hope that we can save the cattle in this area.
But farmers' leaders, after more talks with the government today, are still adamant they don't want vaccination and they don't want a let-up in the policy of slaughter.
You've only got to see a cow with its tongues lining, hanging off, and think what pain that animal's going through. You only have one way to tackle it. You have to kill the virus. I'm sorry, that means the animals have to go with it.
And tonight, further evidence the disease is being beaten. 2 counties, Northamptonshire and Leicestershire, that had been infected are now being given the all clear. Ben Brown, BBC News.
The world's largest pharmaceutical companies have bowed to heavy pressure and dropped their court action against South Africa importing cheap copies of their AIDS drugs. It means the drugs and other basic medicines could now become available to millions of people in poorer countries who can't afford the prices charged by the drugs firms.
Few celebrating in court today would have believed they'd triumph over the might of pharmaceutical firms who tried to stop cheap versions of their drugs being imported. It still could be years away, but tonight the drug firms claim today's decision would mean reduced prices and greater availability for poorer countries where AIDS has hit hardest.
The intent here again is to combine fulfilling our mission of discovering new drugs and new vaccine, and at the same time expanding access so even the developing world can get wide access to the drugs we discover and develop.
But South Africa is not alone in its struggle for cheaper medicines. At this Kenyan orphanage, a musical welcome for visiting US politicians. All the children here have the AIDS virus, but what they don't have here is drugs. So an opportunity to lobby.
This corporate immorality must stop because it's a crime against humanity.
Without pressure from key figures in the richer world, the case would have dragged on. And with it, the prospect that millions more would die, denied even the chance of getting affordable drugs. 1 in 6 people in Kenya is HIV positive. Today's decision offers the prospect of help for those in greatest need. For the millions of people living in Kenya's sprawling slums, the international focus on the price of AIDS drugs obscures one important point: that even basic medicines for TB and meningitis are beyond the reach of many here. Treatable diseases which are just too expensive to fight. And that fight's being lost here in the homes of those affected by HIV. Samuel Kamani can't even afford basic treatments for infections triggered by the virus, and he's not considered poor.
The cost of the drugs comes to 7 times my monthly income. So I'm not able to afford these things.
Yet copies could be produced for a fraction of the brand price. What stopped this Kenyan factory from going ahead and doing just that is the threat of legal action. Now the way's clear to follow South Africa's lead.
Within our own legal mechanism, we want to create a window that will enable us to access some of these drugs to our populations in situations of dire need and in situations where we think it's essential.
Today's developments might eventually make AIDS drugs more widely available, but for now, even cheaper basic treatments would buy Africa more time. Karen Allen, BBC News, Nairobi.
Here, a bitter row has broken out between the Conservatives and Labour over attitudes towards race. In a speech tonight, the Foreign Secretary Robin Cook called on the Tory leadership to do more to stamp out what he said were racist attitudes within the party. The Conservatives accused Mr Cook of grossly misrepresenting their views on race.
Today, in areas like this one in South London, living in a cultural melting pot isn't an issue, it's a fact of life, and people mostly get on with it. But race is always a sensitive subject, and again tonight, controversial. Now, the Foreign Secretary has as good as accused the Tories of trading in racist rhetoric.
No other major British political party would have found it necessary to instruct their candidates to refrain from racism. The Tory leadership cannot avoid taking its share of the blame. In the last few months, they have warned that Britain is in the process of becoming a foreign land, that we are being flooded by asylum seekers, and that foreign doctors are putting the lives of British patients at risk. If William Hague really wants to stamp out racism in his party, He should lead by example.
All a slur, according to William Hague, campaigning in the countryside today. He's saying Britain's a soft touch for asylum seekers. Nothing, he says, to do with headline grabbing or racism.
I think he's just trying to misrepresent the views of the Conservative Party. Our quarrel is simply with the workings of the asylum system. And I think our concerns are shared by the great majority of people in this country. It's not racist to say that. It's nothing to do with any racist attitude.
Party leaders have signed a pledge against racist campaigning, though Labour's been criticised too for taking a tough line on asylum. A few of Hague's MPs won't sign up, and that's added to the row.
We've all signed up to an agreement not to play the race card before the election, which the Tories don't appear to be enforcing. I think it's perfectly proper that people can make comment and say, if you say you're not going to play the race card, why don't you make sure all your people sign up to it?
Would you think differently about me if I was white?
This is the kind of campaigning the Commission for Racial Equality wants, not slanging between parties.
I think political parties should be highly focused on real issues that matter to real people. They should be concerned about concerns that people have on the streets, as opposed to simply slagging each other off to see who is more racist or indeed who's less racist than the other.
The fact that the coming election is so widely seen as predictable may encourage those who are accusing the Tories of playing subtly on age-old prejudices for the sake of votes. For all the parties, a good row is also a way of getting the public's attention. The changing face of Britain has raised serious issues, but expect many more accusations, counter-accusations and denials of racism in the coming weeks. John Pienaar, BBC News, South London.
Detectives in London are continuing to question two people in connection with the death of a woman outside Euston Station on Monday. The man and woman were arrested in North London last night. Elizabeth Sherlock was run over as she tried to stop thieves who'd snatched her handbag.
As news of the arrest came through, one poignant sign of the public reaction to this case has appeared at Euston Station. Under a single-word question, a message offering sympathies to Liz Sherlock's family and friends. The man and woman arrested last night were picked up in the North London area of West Hampstead. All police are saying is that it came after a surveillance operation. Mrs. Sherlock, who was 42, died on Monday. Her husband Peter described her as a 5'2" bundle of energy. The couple had been drinking at this cafe in Euston when Mrs. Sherlock's handbag was taken. She gave chase down the station steps, jumped onto the bonnet of a car, but then slipped under its wheels, getting crushed. Police later released this picture of a Ford Fiesta they say may have been involved in the incident. The couple arrested by detectives have now been in custody for around 22 hours. The police have until just after midnight tonight to either charge one or both of them, get permission to question them further, or release them. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News at Euston Station in London.
The headline rate of inflation has fallen to 2.3%, its lowest level for more than a year. The fall of 0.4% last month reflects the lower cost of mortgages after recent cuts in interest rates. The underlying level of inflation used by the Bank of England for setting interest rates remains unchanged at 1.9%. The twin girls offered for adoption to a British couple over the internet have been returned to the United States. They've been placed with foster parents in Missouri, where they were born, until a judge there decides their future. Last week, Judith and Alan Kilshaw lost their High Court battle for custody of the girls. Genetic testing for medical conditions such as heart disease and cancer is to be made more widely available on the NHS. The government says new laws will allay fears that the tests may be used by insurance companies to discriminate against people and create a genetic underclass.
These scientists are getting close to developing a blood test which could tell which of us are most likely to develop heart disease. The team at University College London is one of many exploring the human genetic code, looking for new ways to prevent ill health.
There's potential for specific advice being given to specific patients. So those patients at highest risk can be told very specifically that certain changes in their lifestyle, perhaps diet or weight, will put them at very much lower risk than they would otherwise have been. And that would be a useful thing.
But the genetic revolution also has its downsides. The government said today it would ban any attempt at human cloning. And the Health Secretary said he'd outlaw insurance companies from using the results of genetic tests.
Forced disclosure of test results could deter some people from taking tests at all, potentially putting their health at risk for fear of suffering discrimination. The danger we need to guard against is the creation of a genetic underclass where high-risk individuals are excluded altogether.
Screening for breast cancer already helps save many lives. Now women with a family history of the disease are to be offered a new genetic test for a rare form of the cancer.
This test will not be definitive to tell them whether or not they will. It will give them a risk. It's a question of actually placing that risk in the context of all the other treatments that are going to be made available to them.
Tom Shakespeare inherited a genetic condition which severely restricted his growth. A researcher on the ethics of genetics, he's worried about the proliferation of tests available.
They may tell us about predispositions, which we might not be able to do anything about, but more often than not, they're talking about risk, about a slightly higher probability. It's very confusing for people. It's going to make a lot of healthy people feel ill.
Within 10 years, there'll be an explosion in the number of genetic tests available which can predict our likelihood of getting anything from heart disease, cancer or diabetes. It promises to be part of a revolution in healthcare, which will switch increasingly from treating ill health to trying to prevent it in the first place. Fergus Walsh, BBC News at University College London.
A 24-year-old woman has been charged with murder after the remains of 3 children were found at a flat in Glasgow. She is expected to appear in court in the morning. From Glasgow, Andrew Castle reports.
Detectives were called to a tenement flat in the Govan area of Glasgow after the remains of a human body were found under a cupboard and floorboards. Police scientists spent much of the day inside the flat and discovered more skeletal remains which were removed for examination, along with several other items and a mattress. It's feared the remains discovered were those of 2 children and an infant, although this has not been confirmed by officers. A woman has been arrested and is being held in custody as neighbours spoke of their shock at the grim discovery at the flat.
Oh, but devastated. I'm here 30 years and that's it. I don't know much more about it, anything else.
Forensic tests on the remains are still continuing. Following post-mortem examinations, the police have confirmed they're looking into the circumstances of the deaths of 3 children. A 24-year-old woman is expected to appear in court tomorrow in Glasgow, charged with murder. Andrew Castle, BBC News, Govan.
Tonight saw the premiere of the latest best-selling novel to take to the big screen. Captain Corelli's Mandolin by Louis de Bernier is an epic love story set on a Greek island during World War II. It looks set to become another success for a British film company currently taking Hollywood by storm.
Penelope Cruz and Nicolas Cage, the stars of Captain Corelli's Mandolin, arriving for their movie's world premiere. With a budget of $45 million, this is a big, glossy period movie. But as an adaptation of a British novel produced by a London-based company, it's a product of Europe rather than Hollywood. It even demanded its stars lived on set during the filming.
I can tell you I didn't extract an enormous amount of sympathy from my friends for being on a Greek island for 4 months.
It was great, you know. I mean, it was a beautiful spot on the earth, Greece. The people are very nice.
It was great. It was an amazing experience to work with all of them.
If Corelli is a hit, it'll be another success for British company Working Title. Its movies may be distributed by Hollywood, but it is now a mainstream player backing a certain type of film.
A sort of film that is British, but can also travel outside of this country, which is very important to us because one of our ambitions has always been to make bigger British films, if you like.
In descending order, these are Working Title's greatest hits so far. Notting Hill is the most successful British movie to date, grossing $363 million worldwide. 4 Weddings and a Funeral made $257 million. Bean, starring Rowan Atkinson, made $234 million. And Billy Elliot has just hit the $100 million mark. Captain Corelli's Mandolin sold over 1.5 million copies in print, so it's quite likely a few people will want to see it when it comes out on film. As for Working Title, their winning formula seems to be on something of a roll. Their next production is an adaptation of Nick Hornby's recent bestseller. Rosie Millard, BBC News, London's West End.
Now football, and as you may have seen, Liverpool have gone through to the final of the UEFA Cup after beating Barcelona 1-0 tonight at Anfield. They'll meet another Spanish club, Alaves, next month in Dortmund.
Liverpool against Barcelona at Anfield. European ties don't come much better than this. International stars on both sides, and probably the best known of them all, Rivaldo, was quick to demonstrate just why Liverpool had to be so wary of him. The goal came just before half-time. Patrick Kluivert handled the ball in the box, and Gary McAllister was given the responsibility of taking a penalty. It was flawless, which was more than could be said in the second half for his teammate Westerveld's handling of this incident. Luckily for him, the ball crossed the line before any real damage could be done by Barcelona. The final whistle brought to an end a match that had become increasingly tense for Liverpool players and supporters alike. They're through, though, to their first European final for 16 years. James Pearce, BBC News.
Manchester United's captain Roy Keane has admitted that the current team may need to be disbanded after their exit last night from the Champions League. Many questions have been asked about the manner of the defeat at Bayern Munich, but perhaps more have surrounded the appearance of a mystery 12th man in United's lineup before kick-off.
There's been much talk about Manchester United needing some fresh blood. Last night,
we're just all really bitter disappointed, you know, and as I said, the great teams get back to finals and win it, and you know, just to show that we're not a great team, we're an average team.
The back pages were full of the demise of United, with speculation about a clear-out of players. But dominating the front pages was Carl Power and his audacious prank. Tonight, at his home in Manchester, they were denying all knowledge of him.
No, he don't live here. No.
But his neighbours tell a different story.
As I said to my husband, I said, I don't believe that. I said, that's Carl next door.
And it was just typical of him. Top one. Just the fact that he could get that close, really. I mean, it's a bit scary, actually, isn't it?
It's 31 minutes past 10. I'll be back a little later with an update on the day's headlines, but now we join our news teams across the UK.
Good evening, I'm Martine Croxall with UK Today. A national coordinator has been appointed in Scotland as part of a raft of initiatives aimed at preventing a repeat performance of last year's exams fiasco. Thousands of students received incomplete, wrong or late results. School pupils are now only a few weeks away from this year's round of Highers and Standard Grade exams, and today the Education Minister unveiled a 5-point plan to make sure their results are delivered accurately and on time.
Appointed to chair the crisis-ridden SQA, John Ward has battled for months to change badly flawed internal structures. The Education Minister says it's now time to deal with the delivery of results. A senior civil servant has been appointed as troubleshooter. His first job is to find hundreds of exam markers. He'll be joined by a team of computer experts. The IT system almost collapsed last year.
This is a set of serious actions taken at the right time to move on to the phase of delivery for this year's exam certificates. And it's very important those certificates are accurate and are on time. We've made that the absolute priority. It's important this management support is there, and any resources that are required will be available to the SQA and to the schools to make sure that happens.
For many pupils, the stress of sitting exams last year was nothing compared to what they suffered afterwards. Today's 5-point plan was broadly welcomed by parents, teachers and the unions.
I think parents and pupils should on the whole be reassured that the executive is actually focusing its attentions and energies on what for those parents and pupils is a very critical time, and that they are really all pulling together to make sure things work properly this year.
Opposition parties questioned the timing of the announcement. The SNP said problems still hadn't been sorted. The Tories said it was a panic measure. Crunch time is looming once again for the SQA, with the exams only 2 weeks away. It's clear problems still exist, and the time for fixing them is rapidly running out. John Morrison, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
A prison officer from York has been jailed for 7.5 years for conspiring to supply ecstasy tablets with a street value of £50,000. Vince Hill, who worked at Armley Jail in Leeds, was arrested by undercover National Crime Squad detectives 2 years ago.
At a clandestine meeting on Doncaster railway station 2 years ago, Vince Hill was trapped by National Crime Squad detectives as he tried to supply ecstasy tablets. Hill had used his contacts among inmates as a prison officer at Armley Jail in Leeds to get ready access to a large supply of the drug. A court rejected Hill's defence that he was trying to be a hero by attempting to smash a drugs ring. Hill said he'd been traumatised by his experiences in riots at Strangeways Jail in Manchester 11 years ago and as a former soldier in Northern Ireland. He said this had made him mentally ill and caused what he admitted was his ludicrous attempt to be an anti-drugs hero.
Here we have a serving prison officer who'd clearly been corrupted by the lure of easy money, and I believe that he was a significant arrest. The connections he'd made in prison made him that.
A judge at Leeds Crown Court also gave a 5-year sentence to a drugs courier involved with Hill.
The steel company Chorus has signalled its determination to end production at the Llanwern works in South Wales. Today, the firm rejected a trade union rescue plan which would have saved 1,300 jobs at the factory. The union spokesman said they felt cheated and betrayed by Chorus. Health and safety experts say it could be months before the exact cause of the blast at the Conoco oil refinery near Immingham in Lincolnshire is known. All aspects of the incident, from plant design to human factors, will be considered. Things will never be quite the same again at Bristol Zoo. One of its most treasured residents left today. Jengi, the baby gorilla, has flown to Germany to be cared for in a special orphans unit after his mother died. Caitlin Hood reports.
As the VIP passenger arrived this morning, there was even time for a quick complimentary breakfast in the back of his taxi before taking to the air. But while Jengi stayed unflustered, for his keepers this was always going to be an emotional parting. When he was born 9 months ago, the Western Lowland gorilla was the first baby from the zoo's current breeding group. Then his mother Unde died suddenly of a rare parasitic infection when he was just 12 weeks old, and the staff took on this extraordinary nannying job.
We've all become very attached to him. He's also come home to mine at night, so we've all built up a very strong relationship with him. But obviously we're professionals, we deal with it, and it's in his best interest.
Jengi is now leaving his human family to join a purpose-built gorilla rearing unit at Stuttgart, where he'll be brought up with others of a similar age.
He'll now be hand-reared with other gorillas, other young gorillas, because he's too small to go with adults now. As he grows older, probably when he's about 3, 4, maybe 5 years old, he will then be integrated into a proper gorilla group, where he'll learn another set of skills, social skills, communication skills with other gorillas, and learn to take his place in gorilla society. And then hopefully when he's about 9, 10 years old, he'll go and become a breeding male in another group in captivity.
But in the departure lounge today, there was time to relax and play too. And with the cameras, while the pilot plotted the course to Germany. And it was time for a dash across the tarmac and a few last goodbyes. No crates. He was buckled in like any international jet-setter.
It'll be an interesting flight, to say the least, but yeah, we're on our way. So.
And then they were off on a private flight to a brighter future. Caitlin Hood, BBC Points West, Bristol.
I can't compete with that, so I'll say good night. Now it's time for the main national and international headlines.
And the main news tonight, the way that doctors administer drugs will change after a highly critical report into the death of a teenager, wrongly injected with an anti-cancer drug in his spine instead of a vein. The coroner at 18-year-old Wayne Jard's inquest recorded a verdict of accidental death. And the government's chief scientist says foot and mouth disease is fully under control. Newsnights on BBC 2 now. But from the 10 o'clock news, good night.
Good evening to you. We've had quite a big contrast in temperatures today. 13 degrees was the maximum, that was in Great Malvern. But just a few miles down the road where there was a big shower, temperatures dropped to just 6 or 7 degrees. Now things become a little bit more straightforward, a little bit quieter through tomorrow and into the early part of Saturday. Rain on Saturday gradually moving through, and by Sunday rain just about everywhere. But I think generally the change in temperatures will happen next week as the mild air eventually moves its way across us. But a cold night again to come tonight. We're looking at temperatures getting close to, if not just below freezing for many inland areas. But things change. We lose the northerly winds, those winds from the cold direction, and then we start to see the air coming in off the Atlantic through the weekend, and more especially a developing area of low pressure moving across a good part of the United Kingdom through Monday and into Tuesday, and with it bringing the mild air in from the southwest. But for the moment we have a little finger of high pressure trying to move across us, giving us some relatively settled conditions, though there's still lots of showers in the far southeast. And then eventually these weather fronts start to make their way in, very slowly making their way in, eventually this main system bringing the band of rain across a good part of the United Kingdom on Sunday. And that means for the London Marathon there could be some outbreaks of rain for much of the race, eventually turning drier through the afternoon. At the moment we've got plenty of showers. They've been feeding down on that brisk northerly wind through the course of the day. Things improving and the sky is gradually clearing across a good part of Northern Ireland and Scotland, though there's still some showers for England and Wales, and a thicker area of cloud beginning to bring some perhaps more persistent rain for a time into East Anglia and gradually spreading across the southeast of England. So here temperatures getting up to 2 or 3 degrees, I think, and not falling much beneath that. But as I mentioned, by the end of the night we could have some frosty patches to watch out for. It also means here it starts off rather dull and cloudy, but I think for the sunshine really Northern Ireland and Scotland have the lion's share of that sunshine through a good part of the day, although thickening the cloud across Northern Ireland during the course of the afternoon, and lots of those beefy showers developing from the eastern Midlands into East Anglia and down into the southeast of England. Those are our temperatures, but again, I think 9 or 10 will be the top temperature, especially in the showers, those temperatures dropping quite swiftly, so quite a mixture. A few miles down the road, some sunshine in the showers. It will feel decidedly chilly. A little bit better through Saturday, a lot of sunshine for a good part of England and Wales, but more cloud, and there's the milder air, but also the cloudy conditions moving into Northern Ireland and a good part of Scotland, moving across a large part of the United Kingdom during the course of Sunday, but hopefully those temperatures gradually lifting and killing off the risk of the overnight frost. For more information, try CFAX or our website. Bye for now.